I talk about my healthcare journey, my nursing experiences, tips and tricks, and anything else along the way. Today I thought I would talk about the things that I've been seeing a lot lately is nurses who talk about having students or training new nurses. Over the years, I've had many trainees with me as a nurse, and I think it's something that a lot of nurses dread. But we were all in a position at one time where we needed to follow somebody and learn something new. And that is one of the fundamental things of nursing is getting training from your future peers, from other nurses, experienced nurses. You don't get paid extra to do training generally. I mean, there's some companies that will pay you a certain fee to do special training things with people, but generally you do not get paid extra to do training or have a student follow you. It's just part of your job duties. Some people really don't like to have students follow them. They don't like to train the new nurses. And I think for the most part, it hasn't bothered me over the years, but there have been times when I too have said, oh, please don't give me a student. But really, it depends on the day, right? I don't want to make a student come along to a very difficult day that might frighten them off, to be honest with you, especially in a hospice setting. In the nursing home, I did a lot of training. I did wound care treatment nurse for 7 years, and they always would have the students train with me on the cart when I was the treatment nurse. And I think I enjoyed doing that until I one time had a nurse trainee with me who she didn't care about what I was saying, and she was pretty flippant and rude about it. And then I think that's when maybe I started changing my attitude about sometimes having students with me. Sometimes you get students that are very eager to learn. They're very appreciative of what you're telling them and the things that you're saying. And other times there are students who are just doing this because it's part of their rotation and they have to do it. They have no desire to do the job that you're doing. So keep that in mind when you're training students. Students are working on their nursing degree, but they're not always going to land in your career path. So when you're training people, keep in mind they're not always going to want to hear what you have to say, but they still have to do what they need to do, right? When they're in the rotation with you. But what happened when I was training this particular person, and it's been many, many years ago now, the person was, their parent was a nurse practitioner and well known in the community, and they didn't have any intention of working in a long-term care setting, which is where they were doing their rotation. And that person said to me, this really doesn't pertain to me because I'm not going to be doing this type of work. Well, one thing that I could say about geriatrics and long-term care is that a lot of the people that come to the emergency room or have emergencies happen to be the geriatrics population. I know that there's a lot of young people, and that's what people want, the adrenaline people. This particular person wanted to work in the emergency room and be a flight nurse. And I think you have to have a certain type of personality to be able to do that. That was never something that I was going to be able to do. But how I countered this claim that they didn't need to know this information is that when a person is laying on a cot in an emergency room and they're compromised and they're older, they can develop a bed sore, they can develop a pressure ulcer in 2 to 6 hours, a bad one, a stage 4, a DTI, an unstageable, that can develop in 2 to 6 hours. And the thing about wounds is once you have a wound, you only get 80% efficacy back of your skin integrity. And so it's really important to protect skin, especially in people who are compromised. People that are older, people that do not have the same ability to bounce back as a younger person. And I think that that particular person was a little less snarky after that, but I then began to sometimes dread the idea of having a student because always before it had been someone who was eager to learn or at least pretended to be. And then there have been times when I've realized you have to be in the right frame of mind to do training for a new nurse or a student. You have to have a good attitude. You have to represent your company. You have to represent your profession. and you have to present it in a positive manner without, sometimes people are very negative. Sometimes people are at a point in their career where they don't have any positive feelings about what they're doing. And those are not the people who should be training new nurses, because there is a huge turnover in nursing. And the reason is because the job is hard. It's hard and the expectations are high and the staffing ratios are not always ideal. I want to complain too sometimes. I've seen good days and bad days in nursing. But when you're training somebody who has come to be a part of your team, I would hope that you welcome them to be part of your team and that you give them tips and tricks to get through the hard days. Because in nursing, we chose to be nurses to take care of people because we wanted to help, because we want to make a difference. And that's hard to do sometimes whenever regulations are coming down and whenever expectations are sometimes you feel beyond what you can give. But I think it's so important when you have somebody following you that you're giving them help and that you're offering to be a source of information for them. Because we've all been at the beginning of our career or at the beginning of a job that we didn't know. And with all of that training that we get, that first time that you're on your own is frightening. It's frightening. And students need to learn. They need to learn because they're going to be out in the world doing what we do. We're getting older. As nurses, we start off young a lot of times and we get older and we can't do the things that the younger nurses can do. That's just the way it is. And we want nurses to want to come and work with us, right? I think as I've gone along in nursing, I've had a lot of challenges in my career, and I've had a lot of times when I didn't feel positive about being a nurse. And those are the times that I would say to my supervisor that I didn't really think I was the best for doing the training that day. Because I think that when you're doing training, the person who's following you shouldn't feel like they're burdening you. They shouldn't. They shouldn't feel like you're doing them a favor, because you're not. You're doing what's expected of you as a nurse. You're expected to train the people that are coming on. It's just part of being a nurse. And if you do it well, then there are good nurses on your team. So I think there have been times when I have felt bad and said to my supervisor, I just don't feel like today would be a good day to take a student. But there are other times I love taking the students with me, because there are days when there are certain types of patients, you do want them to sometimes see some of the challenging things that you're doing, right? You want them to see wound care, or you want them to see a patient that maybe is not your typical patient. You do want them to see some challenges, right? You don't want them to have a boring day with you. And they want to help. So if they want to, check vital signs, things that they're checked off on, and they say to you, hey, can I help you? Let them. And just understand that when you have someone following you, it's going to be a longer day. Things are going to not run as quickly as you're used to running through them on a day-to-day basis. When we get in a routine and we're doing our job, we can get things done at a certain pace on a good day, when something crazy doesn't happen, right? Because crazy things happen when you're a nurse, and unexpected things happen every day. But generally, if you're working the same job, you have developed a routine. You come in, you get report, you set up your cart, you make sure that you have all the supplies that you need, you make sure the meds are there that you need, that you're in a long-term care setting, you're making sure that you have your over-the-counter medications in the top of the cart that you're going to be giving. And in a hospice setting, you're making sure that you have contacted your patients for the day, that they know what time to expect you, that you tell them you have somebody coming with you so that they're not, sometimes when you bring an extra person into the home and it's a vulnerable situation like hospice, you always want to make sure it's okay with your family members that you're bringing in a student or a trainee, because you kind of develop a rapport with your patients, and some patients are not comfortable with having an extra person during a trying time in their life. So that's important in hospice. So when you're doing a training, you want to make sure that you're, again, setting up your day. You want to make sure that your patients know when you're coming, a time range to expect you. You want to let them know that there's somebody coming with you. You want to make sure that you have the supplies that you need to do your day. You know, if you're going to see people who have wound care that day, you want to make sure that you have the appropriate supplies with you when you're going to do those things, so that when you're training somebody, you're prepared to be organized and give that training and that perspective. You don't want to be fumbling around when you're teaching somebody. I am a person who likes to talk, obviously. So I kind of enjoy having new nurses and students a lot of times, because I've been working in healthcare so long that I feel like I've got stuff to share. And so sometimes I even apologize to the people that are training with me and tell them, hey, if I talk too much, just say to me, okay, that's too much information. Because I want them to know how to succeed. I want them to know how to set up their day. And if you do a good job, if you make them feel like they can succeed, then they are more confident when they are on their own. And they kind of remember what you said to them. I've had many people I've trained over the years that do remember me and have said things like, she trained me and she was really kind. She trained me and she was really good and she's knowledgeable. Or they felt like they could come and ask me stuff when they were working with me. And let me tell you, I have questions. I've been doing this for 24 years and I have questions. I've been in healthcare 28 years and I started as a CNA, and I remember when I had to train with people, and I remember the people that were kind to me when I trained, and I remember the people that were rude to me. And when I was a student, I would sometimes get a stomach ache on the day that I had to go train with people at the hospital, especially. Hospital nurses are doing acute critical things sometimes, and they don't always have time to give you the training that they would probably want to be able to give you. And some nurses don't feel comfortable having a nurse walking with them all day throughout their busy, hard day. The thing is, when you've been a nurse a while, sometimes you might develop habits that you shouldn't be training students to do. And I remember something that a nurse supervisor said to me and said to us regularly when we were preparing for state to come in the building and do our annual survey. She said, if you do things the right way, if you do things that are correct, then you don't have to change your routine when you're doing it in front of someone else. So I think it's good to have shortcuts and find things that make your day go better, but it's also important to do things ethically and to do things correctly. If you do that, if you make a habit of doing it correctly, when you're teaching somebody, you're going to teach them the correct way. And if you do something wrong, say, hey, I didn't do that the way that I was trained to do that. Don't do that. Acknowledge if you make a mistake when you're training somebody. That goes a long way too. Then they feel like you're human. You're not above them. You're with them in that moment. So that's all I can say about that. When you have a trainee or a student, be kind, be considerate, and remember a time whenever you were in that position yourself, because we've all found ourselves being trained by someone and hoped that it was going to be a good day and that we'd learn something from it. And I thank you for watching. If you have any stories that you would like to share with me about times that you had trained a new nurse or a student, or when you were a student or a new nurse training, some experiences that you had, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. If you like my content, I would love it if you liked, subscribed, and followed, and I hope to see you soon.